Hey there, everybody. Happy Cinco de Quattro. May the 4th be with you, all that jazz. Um, Still waiting for a lot of things to wake up in the forest, so, there's that. But the neighbor space is waking up pretty nicely, so I thought maybe let's take a look at that today and do a little follow up on our planting into road sand. So let's take a look. We're at the break in the farmer's wall. You can see the uphill food forest over there, but our concerns are in here today in my little health strip. And for some context, we are in a low salt area, so we get a sand salt mixture that is very low in salt for road maintenance during the winter. And we've had a serious bout of rain, which I'll point out some of the signs of as we make our way, because patterns, they're fun. So we've been pulling forsythia and cutting back forsythia and some of the autumn olive and some of the birches that are popping up in favor of these low bush blueberries that you see. Bam! So a small low hedge of low bush blueberries. I will probably, possibly later this year, see about more fruit-bearing bushes on the berm closest to the farmer's wall. But as we make our way over here, you'll see little pops of things like phlox, which is a New England native that we had split out from a few, and so I've just peppered them in every so often. I believe this is Tradescantia, the spiderwort, and I only planted like one or two, so it seems to have gone crazy. But what's interesting is that, see if I can find them. Yeah, so it looks like someone has really enjoyed them. I can see a ton of tops that have just been mowed down, whether it's the turkey or the raccoons. It's probably not the raccoons. Maybe it's a porcupine or some deer. I'm not entirely sure, but they took a snack. I'm not complaining. In addition to the phlox and what I believe is the spiderwort, daffs are always a nice little roadside thing. I know they're not native, but it's kind of one of those trade-offs I'm willing to make in a space that is partially maintained by the town. It feels wise to include commonly known, easily recognizable plants for the town crew to recognize, to prevent them from going too hard in any kind of roadside maintenance that they do. As we come into here, you can see the extremity of the water movement through here. You can see the channel that it just cut through the rocks. And the town crew comes and they swept, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and pulled up some of the detritus, but they pushed a lot of it over into the side, and you can see that kind of berm come up where this water flow cut is. And you can see some of the spaces where I have thrown down perpendicular leaf matter. You can see how abruptly the amount of force slows, stops, and then understandably picks speed back up until it hits another one of my little stops. And so I try my best to maintain this edge here so that the space in here has enough to slow the water and allow it to perk in the subsoil. And so we're getting into a slightly sunnier spot here. This far end is blocked by a number of pine trees that are in the area, as well as some of the maples and birches over there. But this spot actually gets some decent sun from some of this overhead space as well. And so we have a few additional daffodils the narcissus that have enough sun to fully bloom here. But in as well, I have some small strawberries and some forsythia that we didn't manage to get rid of. But then I just saw some. Let's find it again. And so I had also planted out some yarrow. Look at them coming up. And then in addition, things like bee balm. So lower growers, something that is showier to help convince the road maintenance crews that this is being looked after and that it is not just wild jungle that they have to take down with one of those, it's an attachment that kind of, they're coming along here and it tips or it extends out from the side of the tractor, and it's like a brush hog that goes at 90 degrees and will tear through stuff. Then we get into my azaleas, and then the neighbor space itself. So this little pathway down the middle has a small little ramp. I will fix this back up once the town crew is done with their spring cleanings, and I am not going to get spoken to or possibly lose my priority on wood chips. But so when we step into this garden, everything on this side is food, or almost everything on this side is food, and it has a functional purpose. And so tons of blueberries. These are high bush varieties that are just absolutely loaded with flower buds waiting to pop. I'm hopeful that in the next few days we'll start getting some real sunshine and warmer temperatures so that everything can kind of catch up and use the amount of water that we had been receiving. But so this is about 7 or 8 feet of just high bush blueberries, daylilies, more lilies. I have in here just a few small spring ephemeral type. This is a phedamus, and then some kind of Hylotelephium telephium, mostly for a spring and a autumn nectar and pollen harvest for the bees. And so behind them we have some elder and some wintergreen, more phlox, and then we get into some of the more prominent bushes. Right here we have some blackberries, and these guys will get a trellis later on in the season once they have a little bit more to work with, but those should be fantastic eventually. You can just see how laden with flowers this guy is. I have a pollinator partner right down there in the little red bucket. And then I also have a handful that were cuttings from the ones that are down by the actual forest. And so these guys are younger. I don't expect too much in the way of flowers from them this year, but we are getting a few. So they're seeming to like their spot. I'm pretty happy with how they're doing. And I'm hoping that this will become a space where they really like it, and we can kind of select for a boundary for them this way and kind of encourage them back towards the miniature rock wall in here. And then we get to some blackcap raspberries, some trailing raspberries. I could be wrong. These might be No, I'm pretty sure these should be the raspberries, the black caps. And so these guys did get a little decorative trellis. Look at that. Swank. And so I did start training these guys up. This one on the right is looking a little worse for wear, but we'll see how it does. And if it really starts picking back up, we'll start training him up another one as well. But my hope is to have, kind of a... This is up to my chin where it is. So I'd love to have just a little wall of easily accessible pickable fruits for folks. And this is really, I call it the neighbor space because I want there to be a reason for my neighbors to stop by and chat me up if I'm in the garden. I want there to be a bounty for the local wildlife, because they're our neighbors too. I want the kids in the neighborhood to feel welcome and interested in a bevy of different fruits that their parents may not be aware of, and they can go, oh my god, this was so delicious, we had it over there. And it's, another avenue of conversation. It's another avenue for sharing the bounty of the gardens in our neighborhood. Now, I do have a few sages and salvias in here. I'm not sure if you can really pick them out. I have trouble picking them out sometimes. Small overturned jugs and pots. It's really just a half a pot. I broke it in half because I'm clumsy. So I stuck it down there. It's just a nice little hidey spot for any of the salamanders or toads that want to come into the garden. As we make our way past the raspberries, this is my adorable little tricolor willow. This is a Hakuro Nishiki. I just think they're pretty. And a friend of ours was needing to get one of hers cut back, so I took a ton of cuttings. That was one of them. I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And yeah, coming along super nicely. And then past there, we start getting into more of the raspberries. So I have some summer bearing reds, and then this one here, zoom out a little for you. And so this one here, this guy is an Ann raspberry, so the gold, not the double gold. That's possible for next year. I'd love to get some more yellow raspberries as well. And so just a small panoply of fruits. We also have growing in here a ton of lily of the valley, which obviously, please don't eat that. It's bad for you. Don't do it. But they are pretty. They're some of our neighbors' favorite flowers, and I think that it's nice to have just, beautiful things that other people appreciate. Once we start getting into the swing of summer, these little guys, this one here, that's soapwort, Saponaria officinalis, and it's not really so much for the bees, but I do enjoy having so much of it because it makes a great little detergent. It makes a great little natural soap from its sap and its roots, and it's nice to be able to just kind of pluck a plant if I'm feeling really gross in the garden and don't want to track through the house. I can pluck a few leaves or a shoot, pull up a little bit of root and rebury it, and I can wash my hands. It's neat. Well, we have some of those potted up for market this year. We'll see how they do. They do get some really beautiful pink and white flowers, and yeah, they're gorgeous. I don't see a lot of bee activity on them, so, trade-offs, but it's a nice little plant. And yeah, then we get to my little hydrangea, my little try-hard. Something came through and broke that stem. I'm going to have to come back out here. Maybe it's early enough that I can make some cuttings from these guys. I was bringing flowers last year to the market, and the flowers were a huge hit with people. I would just give them away. There's no sense charging money for a single hydrangea flower stalk. But yeah, they're cute. I like them. And so it's just a little like business up front. Put all the beauty, put all the recognizable plants, get people interested, make them feel like it's not a daunting space to come through. There's less of a green wall effect in this area, and so that's our aim for in here. But I can't finish talking about it without talking about the actual hell strip. And so this little 3-foot section here, where the edge of the wood chips goes to the bank. This is almost entirely road sand. Some dirt. I've added compost. I've added leaf material and things, but it's not great soil. There are chunks of concrete and asphalt in the very, very base from when they repaved the road and didn't take everything with them. They just kind of shoved it all off to the side and threw a little sand and topsoil down. So rather than trying to go through and ameliorate hundreds of pounds of asphalt, we deposited on top and we started planting hardier things. More daffs, more monardas, a couple of bottlebrush and various grasses. The small guy up there, this one here, is a taller growing grass. And so those guys will get a few feet tall, and we'll have the yarrow stalks and other grasses coming up, as well as some of the sunflowers and things. And that helps to create a kind of screen so that road dust, even from our rarely traveled on road, has something of a barrier so that we're not contaminating fruit and we're not dusting rubber dust and exhaust directly on the foodstuffs. And so as the season goes on, as our street gets busier, I'm sure that this space here will evolve, but I'm not as interested in having a privacy screen in this section. I'd like it to be something that people walking by can see over, people driving by can see over, but to have the requisite amount of height for the tires that are on the road and only come up a few feet. I think that that's really the way to do it. So, yeah. Here comes one of our neighbors now. So, that's our neighbor space in very, very early spring. Oh, I didn't talk about the little cypress spurge. These guys are cute. They're sweet. I'll leave them unless they're in the path. They're not really edible, but I occasionally see small bees on them, so we'll leave them. So yeah, that's our neighbor space for today. Once we get a little bit more waking up in the food forest, I'll walk back through and do a little walk in the woods video for you guys. See how things are coming along this year. I have a few things that I'm excited to show you once they prove to be successful. So, yeah. Until next time. Thanks for watching. Happy planting.